Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 146. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who's liked, shared, commented, has subscribed to the show over these years. All your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. Also want to take this time to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment has been providing uncompromising quality for over 40 years. Samson products are long-lasting and made of the highest quality equipment on the market. Each project is built from the ground up with the ability to customize every need. The team at Samson focuses on developing the highest quality relationships with their customers, in addition to providing them unparalleled quality and every piece of equipment bearing the Samson name. Learn more about Samson's professional weight room solutions and the Samson standard at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. Trusted since 2012, Cerberus is making the best strongman, powerlifting, and strength sports equipment and accessories, ensuring the ultimate competitive edge. Every one of their products is tried, tested, and proven by top-level athletes worldwide. So whether it's competing on the big stage at World's Strongest Man or training at the home in the gym, Cerberus strength equipment is reliable, durable, and of course, strong enough to handle all your training goals and needs. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out CerberusStrength.com and use our promo code STRENGTH_game to save on your next order. Also want to thank our sponsors, Sport Kilt. Sport Kilt products are made for people who like to be active and make a statement while they train, compete, play, and adventure. Their kilts are designed for comfort, freedom, and style, made for all the brave ways you move. Born in Scotland and stitched in America, Sport Kilt offers the highest quality custom kilts and accessories. So check out the No Pants All Glory selection of kilts and shop the best collection of high quality American-made sport kilts and accessories at sportkilt.com and use promo code TSG to receive an extra 10% off your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Jeff Kryglik. Jeff is a strength coach and personal trainer, as well as founder of Deep Blue Training LLC, which offers personal training in person as well as online programming, consultation, and coaching. His mission is to teach the sport of strongman to the average gym goer, prospective competitor, and to simply make people better through unconventional methods. Kryglik began working as a local television producer, sports writer, and reporter for multiple companies in the Maryland area after earning his degree at Salisbury University. All while performing his main job at night, during the day he continued to stay involved in his own training before beginning to coach individual athletes during the day, and in 2016 got his first official job in the coaching world at FORZE Training in White Marsh, Maryland. In 2016, before later becoming an assistant coach at NEVERsate Athletics from 2017 to 2018. He continued to work with clients, athletes, and other strongman competitors until stepping out on his own to coach full-time, starting Deep Blue Training in 2023. Kryglik is a former outside linebacker for the Salisbury University football team. Since his time in college competing has concluded, he has traded trading for the gridiron with training for strongman. Kryglik has been competing since 2015, having multiple national competition appearances in the middleweight division. He is a 2019 Maryland Strongest Man in the 200-pound weight class and has competed at the official Strongman Games in 2018 in the 90-kilo weight class, as well as qualified for the Arnold XPC Deadlift Championships in 2021. When he's not training for an upcoming competition, he's an avid gamer, or you can find him watching all sports. Like I said, I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Jeff Kryglik. What's going on, everybody? Today we've got one of my old athletes, one of my Salisbury football players from way back in the day, turned strongman, turned now personal trainer, strength coach, business owner. We've got Jeff Kryglik on the show. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing all right, Nick. It's great talking to you again.
Hey, it's good to catch up. Like I said, it's been a while in the making, and you always had kind of the affinity for like training and stuff outside of just like football performance and getting ready for game day. So it's kind of cool to see like it turnkey and then actually switch gears. And I know we'll kind of get into what the career looked like right after college and then like how it kind of morphed into you becoming a coach. But before we kind of get into career path and all that stuff, let's kind of take it back to like before like Salisbury football, before getting involved in strongman training. Like, how did you kind of like find an affinity for training, a love for the sports, and then ultimately lead to football and then strongman?
So my family has always been really active. I have two siblings, an older sister, younger brother, and we've always been involved in sports. Literally from the time that I was 5 years old, I was always involved in some form of organized sports. And then fast forward to around like age 12, my dad acquired a weight set. And initially I didn't understand why, but me and my brother, it was set up in our basement, and he was like, "We're gonna train. We're gonna work out. We're gonna get stronger." And it's not like my dad had us on like any crazy program. It wasn't necessarily like bro splits or anything like that. We just kind of grabbed a bar. It was one of those really thin barbells with the sand weights on the end. I don't know if you ever had one of those, but like we had a set of dumbbells, a bench. It was actually big enough where we could actually do some squatting. It was a little risky, because we had very low ceilings in our basement. So it's like if we stood up a little too quick, we might tap the ceilings. So definitely a little risque there. But at that point, I was hooked. And it was crazy because initially it was just about trying to get better for football. It was just trying to get better for baseball because those were the two main sports that I had played at the time. And then fast forward to Salisbury. I've listened to a few of your podcasts, oddly enough. Andy Deck, you, Mike Kudleski, Brian Wilson, Nick Aloy, all strength coaches. And the thing is, I always looked to you guys a little bit more than I looked at the football field because I wasn't the most talented football player, but I found that this weight room stuff was really friggin' fun. And I mean, it kind of helped that, like, my high school weight room, I went to Eastern Tech in Baltimore County. We were a very good football program, and the head football coach there very much valued strength and conditioning training. In our off seasons, we had 3 days a week of strength training, 2 days a week of speed training and movement prep, et cetera, et cetera. And then we get to Salisbury, and I'm just like, man, this is a whole other level. Like, I'm seeing bands, chains. I see all the racks lined up. I see a group of guys at every single rack. It was like 5 to 10 guys because obviously football, you got a bunch of people at every single rack. And I'm just seeing, I walk into Powers Gym, the legendary Powers Gym that just got a major upgrade, and I see all these numbers on the wall. And the first thing I can think about is like, I know I may or may not accomplish something where I may, become a Hall of Famer at Salisbury for my achievements on the athletic field. I'm like, but I definitely want to be there because that, while, records are meant to be broken, if I get on there at least one point during my time at Salisbury, that would be really cool. And the first guy that I could always think about was Brian Wilson. Like when I had gotten there, he was a senior and he was just such a workhorse. And I remember the first session of spring ball, the first semester that I played football, I was just like, man, that guy is unbelievable. And it's like, what can I do to be like that? And that was my first introduction into really like not just programming for athletes, but also like strength training in general. Like up until that point, like it was very much bigger, faster, stronger, early 2000s lifting where it's like you get a template, you have a couple of exercises, and you just write this out over a 4 week period, try to progress each time. There wasn't any thought process into speed work, max effort work, deloading, none of that. In season training, how that looks different than off season training. And then out of nowhere, I see you guys doing these strength sports, and I was just like, I thought this was just for fat guys. Like I always loved watching Strongman. I won't say I always loved watching powerlifting. I get a little bit of a different appreciation for powerlifting because with strongman, you can kind of brute force things. And not that technique isn't important in strongman, but in powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting, it's a little bit more technical mastery. But like when I would see you, Andy, Greg, Inocencio, and then Mike lifting, I'm just like, I got to do this at some point. But I had no real clue on how to get there. Um, and I would always try to watch from afar. And meantime, obviously still training for football, training on my own a little bit. And then I get out of college and I'm like, all right, what the hell am I going to do? Like, I'm still training as if I was an athlete, but I didn't have any real goal at the time. And this was around, I'll say like 2014, 2015. It's like the infancy of when Instagram really started to become a little bit more prominent. You can only have 15-second videos. And like I was trying to get most of my information from that, from YouTube, and also Elite FTS and Westside Barbell, two really big influences for me. And through Andy, I kept seeing this Greg guy, this Greg Inocencio, as I had mentioned, and he reached out to me through a DM one day, and he was like, "Why don't you just come train strongman one time?" And I was like, "Sure." I don't know anything about it. I was like, "Just make sure I don't die, and I'll be good to go." Because I didn't know that there was anything for weight class athletes. So this was November 2015. My first training session at Coliseum Gym before the arena became into what it is now. And it was just a group of, I'll say about a half dozen guys, and everybody's training everything or a couple different events were set up. And the thing that just drew me in was the community. And I was just like, man, I'm like, everybody, even the guys that are in the same weight class and competing against each other, is helping each other. And I'm like, this sport doesn't just build better athletes, it builds better people too. And that drew me to the sport. And I haven't looked back since.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, the Coliseum back in like the early days, I think before the wall, like when there was only like one room back there too. It was
Uh
so
huh.
cool. I mean, it's expanded and it's gone like crazy places, and like John Ward and all the guys that have been there before that have kind of let it organically grow. I think my belt squat's still there, my pitch shark.
It is still there.
Yeah.
It is still
So
there.
yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff in there, and there were some fun times coming over there, like 2014 to 2016. If I could sneak over there from Loyola and we didn't have like a game that day or that morning and come join that group, it was so much fun. And like you said, the community is like one of the big draws of that, and being able to kind of train for something too. I think that's what a lot of college athletes miss, besides just the atmosphere and being around people that are kind of working hard, exposed and suffering together. It's just being able to do it with other people that are like-minded. And strongman, there's so many people doing different competitions or are good at different things or different weight classes. It feels a lot like football too, because you might be a running back that's like kind of good overall, but then you work with a lineman, you work with a guy that's like in a super heavyweight class, and you're just like, damn, he put 400 over his head. He's like, I 400 like pulling off the ground is difficult for me. So it's such a fun training atmosphere to kind of be part of it. And I'm sure you could probably talk on like how it's grown from that point in time, like 2015 until now, like how your strongman career has kind of like evolved and progressed from day one until stepping on the platform to actually compete as well. How has that changed after day one and be like, hey, I'm hooked. I want to keep doing this. What do I keep doing?
So what's so crazy is I thought that I was just going to do this for like a couple weekends. I didn't think that it would turn into this. I'm not going to say addiction because I wouldn't say that about a hobby. I will say it has shaped my philosophy behind training much differently. And the thing is, I think it's a lot more healthier to keep it that way. Because the thing is, like, I could see myself training strongman the rest of my life. I can't see myself competing until I'm like 80. But the first time that I competed, it was May of 2016. Greg kind of drew me to do it again because he was the one that got me into Coliseum. And the first competition I had done was Beast of the East. It was all max events. And it required a little bit of strategy. And of course, at the time, as a new guy, I had no idea what the strategy was. I didn't know how Wessel's rules worked. I didn't know how max tonnage worked. At that point, I was just trying to do it just to do it, and probably looked a little bit like an idiot doing it sometimes. But at that point, it was just fun. And then it's funny because after that, I was like, I never went into the novice class. And I think that was the right decision because at the time, like, I'm not saying that you necessarily need a baseline of strength numbers in order to go into the open class, but you should be fairly comfortable that you could do at least decent and not zero everything before making that jump. I was fortunate enough that I had enough, not just time under the bar, but also enough time with the events prior to that I felt confident to go right into the open class. So at that point, I was like, all right, now this is something that where I feel like it's like a sport again. It's like I can, try to become a champion in some form or fashion. And I've done, I want to say since then, over 33 competitions, all in strongman, a few at the national level, and I was able to do the official strongman games in 2018. Won a few state titles, which is pretty cool, have a few records. But the thing that kind of drew me to continue to compete was the variety of challenges. Like, you're never going to get the same five events in strongman. I mean, you're always going to have some form of a press, usually, some form of a deadlift, usually, a carry, a load, and then usually there's like some form of a wild card. And that spontaneity all the time kind of attracts me to that. On top of that, I think one thing that has really changed is like when I first started, obviously I was welcomed into the group at Coliseum. And then I'm like, well, you know what? It's like, not that I don't like going to Coliseum, but when I would see like you guys training at the unit, for example, at Salisbury or sometimes at Powers, I'm like, you guys got all your own stuff. If I'm going to do this for a long time, I need to get some of my own stuff too. And at that point, like there were a couple people because I was training at a gym in Middle River that didn't have any strongman equipment. So my only exposure to strongman was at Coliseum. So I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I need to commit to it. So I started getting some implements here and there. And, people start talking at the gym and they're just like, hey, what are you training for? I was like, I'm doing this strongman thing. And it just started to grow organically. And I'm like, well, now it looks like I have a training crew. And initially, my intention was, I mean, this is an individual sport. And yes, you have your supporters, but I didn't think this was going to kind of fall into my lap. So it grew organically and it made my growth in the sport a little bit easier because, as you know, in strongman, there is never one way to skin the cat. There's so many different ways to accomplish a lift. And just because I could do something one way doesn't mean that my one of my teammates is possibly doing an Atlas stone load a little bit differently, and then he can see something that I'm doing, and I can manipulate that for my own training. So I will tell you, while I do train a lot on my own now, being a part of a group has always been something that's been a staple since I started in 2016. And I don't think if I didn't have any aspect of a group in my training, I don't think I'd still be doing strongman.
Yeah, it's always a weird concept to like kind of think about that. And obviously like changing gears a little bit and having maybe less flexibility with your schedule as a coach. Like sometimes like training by yourself is almost a necessity. And
Hmm.
I'm I'm on both sides of the fence the same way that you are, where you're talking about like, oh, having solo training, doing it by yourself sometimes, like it's a great thing to kind of possess because at the end of the day, competition wise, or you showing up to the gym and like actually coming in to train, like it's all got to be intrinsically motivated. It's great to have a group, but if all your training partners cancel or there's bad weather or something like that, it's still on you whether or not you actually go there and get the work done. Having those training partners to help spot and like give guidance and have a community, all those things are great. And I would probably say the same thing too. Like I've been training solo predominantly for over a decade, and it's probably not because of my choice, but it's because of the schedule and it's because of what I want to do and how I kind of allot that time. But I definitely know that probably the strongest I've ever been and the best I've done competition wise has been having a group. And if it's not training in person, it's been sharing like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Like that's why me and Andy used to upload videos all the time. Is like, hey, I'm 3,000 miles away. This is what I did today. Like, what do you think I should do next week? Oh, well, I did this. How many reps did you do on this? And we wouldn't tell each other until we both had finished like that competition.
Hmm.
So it's way different, but it's kind of cool to see like how it grows. Not only just equipment, but like organically the group around you. And I'll tell you, if you keep growing equipment, just be very selective when you move because I'm I am on my next trip, like moving for this new job, and the amount of equipment and weight that's coming out of that garage gym wood is staggering. It not it is a pain to move, but I do like collecting equipment and I can't wait to put it into like a bigger space.
As a
That
quick
would be ideal.
As a quick little side note, I know exactly what you mean because at one of the gyms that I train at, sometimes I can't keep all of the equipment there. So I have to go to the storage unit, which luckily is only 5 minutes away, but like load up with plates, sandbags, and take like a couple trips in order to make that training day possible for when I do the group training. It's
Yeah.
part of the game. It's not sexy, but my Camry probably doesn't like it, but I also deadlift my Camry, so that happens too.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, I think the worst thing moving was uh Mike Hidlesky's monolift. That is by far
Oof.
the worst thing. I think I've moved that thing at least twice. I know he's moved it every single time, so I'll never get the same numbers as him, but there's some pieces of equipment that should probably just be welded to the ground and never moved, and that's one of them right
The
there.
the Conan's wheel has to be another one.
Yeah, that one's pretty rough too, but hey, so that's awesome to kind of hear about like some of the changes and stuff like that. We'll kind of go back a little bit too, because as you're starting to talk about all these things, like you start to see that not training at Coliseum, where it's kind of it's its own like little microcosm where there's people that are always going to train there in that area. And for whatever reason, like going to other gyms or locations, sometimes it's just not feasible for everybody, but you started to see more and more people gravitate towards you and that style of training. And then like you kind of did the same thing that Andy and all the other guys were doing and like Greg is doing, where you're like, hey, come on in, like just come try the stuff, like stick for a day and come see what it's like. You started doing that yourself. Like when did like you kind of think about shifting gears and starting to really kind of get involved in training? Because before that, you were involved in sport and like a lot of different versions of that, but almost in a, I don't want to say voyeur, but like reporting, like journalism, television, like all those other aspects of sport, like consuming it and like relaying that information. But when did it shift gears to be like, you know what, I want to be part of coaching a little bit more.
So the starting the group training definitely got some sparkles to sort of like kind of go off in my head, and I was kind of like, you know what, maybe this is something I could see myself doing. I even had this pipe dream in my head that maybe I'd want to own like my own gym. This was when I was in my mid to late 20s, and I thought that everything didn't cost money and I could just get there with ambition and grit. That's just not how life works. I will tell you, so I was involved in media, sports and news media, both television, radio, for about a decade. And about 8 years in, I started to see the climate of the business change a little bit. And it wasn't necessarily anything that had to do with political events or beliefs that were going on in the country. It's just look at where we are now with technology. There's a lot more AI driven things now. The use for people in media and television kind of started to dissipate a little bit. At one point, in both my television and radio career, I was told that we will no longer need anchors within the next 10 years because we can just create AI models of them and we'll just have script writers do the television and radio broadcasts for us. That it's got to make you feel really good to hear that humans are worthless, right? Even though humans are the ones that are creating the content. And at that point, I was just like, man, I'm like, that's a really harsh reality. And the thing that also like really kind of took me back about the business too is like when I first started, I was under the impression like, I wasn't going to make a whole lot of money. It's very similar to strength coaching in that you kind of do it for the love of the game and you grind it out until you can hopefully get, that big break, but sometimes you're running into people that are grandfathered in for 2 to 3 decades. Sometimes you're running into a market where, people like what they see and they don't necessarily want change, so they may hold on to somebody a little bit longer because of that. And then on top of that, when I got into more of the executive roles in television and radio, um, I found that my family and friends and also my hobbies started to lose a little bit because I had a work phone in one hand, I had a personal phone in another hand, and I'm spending all this time in front of a screen. And like even when I'm with them, I could never turn the off switch. I could never turn the off switch on because I was always thinking about, oh man, I got to go into work again and like what could go on. Because the thing is, like, it was nice in a sense that with media, you never have any given day is going to be the same. But at the same time, it's also extremely stressful because you might have a day like January 6th where you're working 24/7 and it's nonstop because it's very fluid and screw holidays, screw time off. It's like you just got to get the job done. And it's like you're just getting paid X amount without really feeling any sort of satisfaction from it because you're not eating, you're not drinking, you're not sleeping, you're not really socializing. You're just locked in to this particular piece of content. And at that point, I just started noticing, like, even within myself, I was like, I wasn't as happy around, like, the social aspect outside of work. I wasn't as happy training. Like, I was training and competing, but at that point, I was doing it so that way I didn't probably bang my head against the wall when I got home. And I was like, at this point, I really needed a change. And instead of becoming a nastier person, the thing that I thought to myself was, when I did something like strongman or when I did something like football, like a big thing that my family, my parents, it always instilled in me is, if you're gonna go for it, go for it. And I'd always had this training thing kind of sitting in the back of my mind. Like I would do, like some programming here and there, and I would try it out with my friends, be like, hey, what do you think of this? Like just from the influences that I mentioned earlier. And it kind of grew organically. And then my first year, maybe even my second year. But if I'm going to commit to this, I'm probably going to enjoy it. It's not necessarily going to be about the money at first. It's going to be about the satisfaction and the happiness, and then the money will come along. And fast forward today, I'm in almost towards the end of my third year full time, just doing this as an independent contractor and entrepreneur. And it's grown without me really having to try all that much. Oddly enough, word of mouth has been my biggest friend, but at the same time, I also have to wear many different hats. So it's cool in a sense that, while it's not necessarily what my degree was for when I graduated from Salisbury, I found that I've learned a lot more skills doing this as opposed to just doing something that I'm a complete expert in. And I'll emphasize air quotes on that because I feel like you can't necessarily be a master of everything regardless if you have, a piece of paper attached to your name. You obviously need real world experience. But for me, like what I've really learned in this entrepreneurial mindset is like there's a lot more communication, like which was what my degree was in this field than I completely anticipated. Like, yeah, I went to school for, multimedia design and communication, but the way that I illustrate messages through training is kind of similar to what I was doing in television and radio, just with different avenues of expressing it.
Yeah, and the difference is it seems like from TV and radio, like you're relaying that information for the masses, but you don't really get to put too much of your own spin on it and you can't really tailor it. It's just I mean, that's the way, honestly, a lot of times the news should be. Maybe sports media is a little bit different, but you still have to base it off facts and what actually happened, and then you can throw your opinion in it. Like news related is like, hey, I want to hear the facts. I really don't want to hear anybody's opinion. And you're right, like that schedule. is chaos because you're reactive. And when something's like going wrong and everybody else is like hunkered down and they're looking for information, they're looking for answers, they're looking for everything, it's you and all those other people that are behind the scenes, like actually trying to provide that. And it's a taxing, like unforgiving kind of career. And honestly, probably a lot of times just like coaching, like kind of thankless in a way.
Hmm.
And I think people take that for granted. So you can see why, like someone like yourself that has seen the other side, has seen the teamwork, seen the community, seen like all with hard work that pays off that comes from training and from playing sports and stuff like that, like how you can get stuck in a negative rut and just let it consume you. And you kind of pulled the ripcord and found something that works really well for you. And like, yeah, you could, like you said, you can be an entrepreneur and still communicate and use your degree in a different manner. And I mean, we talk about this all the time, like the art and science of coaching and like which one's more important, like garnering the experience or gaining the knowledge. And like the experience is going to win a lot of times. Like the knowledge will come as you go. And if you really care about what you're doing, you're going to like continue to educate. You're going to continue to like stay abreast of like the research happening and stuff like that. I would much rather like fall in love with that part of it and then pick up the science pieces as it goes on and reinforce the experience that you have. So definitely cool. Like, when do you think you knew you kind of like, hey, I made the right decision? Like, and what advice do you have for someone that might be kind of stuck in that a similar position? They might not want to become a coach or something like that, but they might want to make a kind of career switch or like get more involved in something to jump ahead and become an entrepreneur.
So the first time I knew I made the right decision, and this may seem a little crazy because, like, most of my background has and influence has come from training for sports and training for strongman. And as you had mentioned, like, there are plenty of continuing education opportunities. But for me, it was training Gen Pop, man. And I didn't expect to like training Gen Pop because these are probably the people that are going to have the most excuses. They're going to have the least amount of dedication. They're not necessarily going to buy in as easily. But to me, that's where I'm like, this is where my actual role comes in, though. I'm the one that's creating the buy-in. I'm the one that's providing the knowledge, not necessarily just being a problem solver, but somebody that can like show you the way and show you that, hey, like, just because you move a little bit differently now doesn't mean we can't make this better in the future. And Nick, that happened within the first 3 months of me starting this full time. So I started full time officially April 2023, and I had I want to say like a half dozen clients, like, and it all came through like reaching out to friends and then also my own research because I knew I didn't. Based on my previous experience from my career, I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't want somebody else to be a boss of me, which take that as you will. Like I knew an independent contractor route would probably be the best way to go. So I looked for gyms that literally just through Google searching that ultimately accepted independent contractors. I wasn't looking at your LA Fitness. I wasn't looking at like an F45 or something like that because I know those are usually more corporate controlled and they kind of want to not necessarily restrict you from programming your workouts, but kind of limiting what you can do. Like, I'm not trying to do a 30-minute session just to try and make more money to get more sessions throughout the day. Sometimes, like, my sessions may go a little bit longer than an hour or 90 minutes because I want to get something done the right way. And that's the freedom of having the, being an independent contractor. So through research, I was able to find two different places around the Baltimore area that accepted that. I also knew that, through Strongman, I also had potential for online coaching. And admittedly, as somebody who has, been coached by somebody online before and does online coaching, I wasn't a huge fan of it at first because for me, the delayed feedback is the biggest issue that, is probably always going to be around because some people, will send you feedback as they're doing their workout. Some people will ask questions before the workout. Some people will give you the feedback after they've done it, and then you get the I'll do it next time type of deal. So it's like you get, a little bit of a mixed bag. But what I have found is everybody works a little bit differently, and you have to kind of approach, this is where the communication degree comes in. You have to kind of approach how you deliver that message so that way the feedback is a little bit closer to the actual exercise being done. On top of that, I would also say don't be afraid to spend a little money to make a little money. Initially, when I made the switch between careers, I was looking at my bank account and I was just like, this is going to be a rough one. Like, it's like the first couple months, like when you start at zero, obviously it's like it's all on me to make sure that, it's not zero at the end of next month. So, go through the process, get the LLC, look at ultimately what business costs that you need to, have. So for example, I looked at like, Uncle Sam's got to get his money, so do I need to hire an accountant? Ultimately, I've always done my own taxes, and doing this as an independent contractor, obviously things change. So I took the time on my own, again, since it was fairly early on, to learn some of the skills myself. On top of that, it's like, all right, so I'm doing some virtual coaching as well, but do I need to create an app for this? And some coaches do really well with an app, but again, I'm starting at zero. I don't necessarily have like, any money to invest in this except, what I've already saved up. So I found as many free options as I could to start and find a way to essentially, balance how much I was making at the time and utilize that into still delivering information clearly and concisely to my clients. And then on top of that, obviously, the training, I want to still be doing the damn thing. Like for me, when the worst thing that I've seen since I've started this full time is I go into a gym and I see a trainer who's like gimping around. And I'm like, they're giving their clients like sets of 10 to 15 on squats, and they can't walk from the bench over to the dumbbell rack without hobbling like Quasimodo. Like that, you are very much like your own advertising by not necessarily just your look, but by, for lack of a better term, the shit that you do. And you got to look like you play the part. So for me, it's like the not only do I, still enjoy competing, I don't compete as much as I used to. I usually do about 1 to 2 a year. Competing for me now is more so about, challenging myself in ways that I haven't with strongman. As I mentioned, I've done over 30 competitions, so I've exposed myself to a lot of different events. But now it's like I want it to be new again. So give me a new event and I'll try that. And that's awesome. On top of that, I can also, when I try these new events, use that new information and find a way to deliver that to my clients. So that way, if they happen to want to compete in strongman, and I don't push every one of my clients to compete in strongman, but if they want to compete in strongman, I can use that information that I had gained to pass it on to them. On top of that, it's also really cool because I know that you've done some of this stuff at the college strength and conditioning level as well, Nick, where you've taken strongman implements or strongman workouts and incorporated that into some of the training philosophy that you would give to your athletes. Man, when I give like some of the 50 somethings that I train a farmer's carry and I see the look on their face when they're holding something that they couldn't believe was actually in their hands, that feeling is completely unmatched. And that's why, like, I'll come back to what I originally said. Seeing the Gen Pop people do the really cool shit is way better and more satisfying than I expected it to be because I knew strength athletes and people that wanted to get into the strength athletics were willing to go that extra mile. I didn't have to create as much buy-in. But with those guys and gals, the fact that they see that they can do hard things was really when I knew I made the right decision.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like being able to like train a soccer mom, train an older guy that hasn't like gone in the weight room or done any training in a long time and see the look on their face and see like the look of accomplishment and like satisfaction from being able to actually have a good training session that's like thoughtfully done and them to overcome an obstacle or do something they didn't think was possible is pretty cool because it's not that athletes take it for granted, but
Hmm.
it's at some point in time becomes natural to them. It's work. Like, okay, so you're trying to squeak out like a percentage here, like another pound here, shave off some seconds here, whatever it is. It's innately part of what it is for them to be better and perform better at their sport, their given sport. But with general population, like you're getting them kind of prepared for life. So
Hmm.
like you tie in the goals of what they want to do and how they live their life or being able to pick up their grandkids or be able to like go on a walk like around the neighborhood without like being fully out of breath. Like those things are super meaningful because it might not be like super sexy to be in not in front of 1,000 people like trying to win a huge game like around Christmas time or something like that, but the satisfaction you get from that individual and them being able to like live their life to the fullest is a really cool feeling. And you get to like really master the basics with them too and like teach them from the very beginning. And athletes, a lot of times, like we talk about social media and AI and stuff, the amount of information that they get from qualified coaches, unqualified coaches, fake AI coaches, some random person in the middle of nowhere that just spews it out. Um, it's overwhelming. And like as a
Hmm.
coach, sometimes you're like trying to dodge bullshit to even get to your athlete that's a foot in front of you and try to convince them to do your program and you're the coach in front of them rather than someone in general population that stuff doesn't even pop up in their feed. It's not even on their radar. So you're the source of everything for them when it comes to physical development and health and wellness. So it's
Hmm.
got to be like kind of a gratifying feeling to be like, oh, I don't have to like convince them to do this because they saw this guy do 400 sets of curls with a band and their eyes closed. Like
Hmm.
they're kind of gonna not blindly follow me, but they're going to treat you like the expert you are.
So it definitely is sim I will tell you that is 100% correct in terms of, looking to me from the leadership perspective. But what I've also found is there's a lot more carryover with the Gen Pop to my athletes in terms of personality wise, because ultimately you got to figure out how people tick. So as you mentioned, I mean, with the access to information being, I would, say information overload in this day and age, you know, I can't tell you how many times that I've gotten either a text message or a direct message of an exercise that is sort of questionable or a movement that seems questionable, whether it's for, general fitness or also strongman related. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, why the hell am I even entertaining this? But at the same time, though, like, my clients deserve that respect. So I'm willing to, look at it, entertain it. And you could ask a few of my strongman clients. I tell them, look, if it's something that I think we is worth trying, let me try it out, and like we'll get a look at it. And I actually call it Jeff testing, because the way that the way that I do this is, like, let's say there's a particular technique on circus dumbbell. So I saw one of my clients saw something about how to rack a circus dumbbell a unique way. So I was like, all right, let me try this myself, because my thought process is, if I can figure out how this mechanically works, at least I can explain why I think it may or may not work for my client. And the same thing goes for anything else strongman related. Like, because there's so many different ways to do it, there are some times where I'm like, I haven't, done this before. So let me try this out, see if I like it. And, while it may not necessarily work for me, if I've tried it, I can at least give a little bit of feedback to my clients. So that way, if they want to try that method, whether it's, in training, ideally not on competition day, but if they wanted to try it in training, I can be like, all right, here's what a little bit of what you can expect to feel, as opposed to, all right, just try it. And if they get hurt, they get hurt. I would never do that. I would rather want to, test it out myself, get a little bit of feedback myself, and then sort of create some expectations of what they should experience if they're going to try that particular movement.
Yeah, I like that. Being able to actually have some skin in the game, and even if it's something slightly different, like we talked about, and you mentioned strongman, there's so many ways to kind of execute a movement. Like there is some brute force in it too, and there's an art and kind of figuring out the competitive side, and like you said, Wessel's rule and all that stuff. I remember first time doing Highland games, someone got me real good too because I didn't know the ins and outs of all that stuff and had no idea that we were tied on points and we go for weight over bar and he knows what he can hit. And I was like, this is the first time I've done it. And he's like, let's go for like this half foot. And I was like, all right. I feel like I don't know what it is. The difference is, and he's already beating me on countbacks. So all he has to do is not make sure I don't get it. And he like beat me based off countbacks. I was like, what the hell? I was like, so like understanding those like little nuances and stuff like that, like different techniques, like how to turn on like a farmer's. There's so many like little small things that you could pick up, and having a group, having a coach, like you're not going to figure that out like those 10,000 hours. Like strongman's hard to get like those 10,000 masters hours in because a lot of people, I know myself when I was doing a lot of it, it's one day a week. And maybe you
Hmm.
kind of sprinkle in like log and like axle and some like different conditioning events throughout the week, but really you kind of smash that big training day together on like a Saturday or Sunday when you have more of the time. So it's hard to get your hands on those implements as often. And then, like you said, the variety too. Like if I don't have a duck walk or like a power stairs in a competition, I'm sure as fuck not doing it.
Correct.
It's not happening. I'm not for funsies going to look for stairs that I can do that for. Like I'm training for what's coming up in competition, and it makes it fun, but it also makes it difficult to kind of go back and rely on that information you had from before. And like my training log and having people there with me, being able to refer back to that stuff and remember those like little cues is huge. And like that, what reminds me of that too is like a blooper of Andy trying to remember, like, this is a pro strongman, try to remember how to do a log clean and press. Like, he had the biggest brain fart of all time. Like, no, not a log, but a keg. Has the keg in his lap, and he's like confused about like how to do the technique. And it's kind of the beauty of it too. Like, you haven't done it in such a long time that you have to like relearn it. And there's also when you relearn it or you bring someone in for the first time, they unknowingly do a technique. They're like, whoa, I didn't even know you could do that.
Hmm. That
And
is
it's
100% correct.
fun.
Yeah, and oddly enough, I can't tell you how many times I've referred to Andy's how to keg press video because that was how I first learned how to do it. And it's funny that you bring that up that he forgot how to do it. But yeah, also interesting because I have that relationship with circus dumbbell. Like I absolutely am not the worst circus dumbbell presser of all time. But there are days like the most I've ever hit is 205, and there are days when I can't hit the empty dumbbell. And I'm just like, what the hell am I doing? And it's cool because not only does it, for me as an athlete, help me, remember how to do these movements, but also, as you said, it's like I give my clients a visual representation of, how I do it. But if somebody else does it a little bit differently, like the one woman who I coached to Strongman Nationals this year, she split jerks it. And you will never catch me split jerking like a circus dumbbell in competition. Have I done it in training before? Sure. Did it look like a dumpster fire? Absolutely. But again, that's what training's for. And that's another reason why I see the value of doing like an actual event day and not just training strongman throughout the week is think about how many different ways that you can clean and press a log. You can do a one motion or viper press. You could strict press it. You could push press, push jerk, split jerk, squat jerk if you even want to try that. Be my guest. But there's so many different ways to do that. And that's what training's for. Like, so that way you can start adding those different weapons to your arsenal to where, like, let's say you go to a competition, regardless of what level it is, and the weight that's being tested, like if it's 4 reps, whether it's a load, whether it's a push or a press, whether it's a deadlift, if the weight is something that is not maximal and it's sub-maximal, at this point, now it's like, all right, I've got this way to do it, this way to do it. You've got so many different bullets in your holster there. It's just like, man, let me actually like, try this and see if I could save a little bit of time so that way I can get more reps out of it. So for me, it's doing the event training as a standalone day also prepares you for the ebbs and flows of what a competition day could typically be like. Because when you go to the gym, like, whether you train for 30 minutes, whether you train for as long as 2 hours during the week, the focus is obviously on like, typical barbell and dumbbell movements. But for something as specific as strongman, like you have to do a little bit more thinking during these event days. There has to be a little bit more thoughtfulness for the programming because like if you head into an event day and like let's say you're getting towards the end of your competition prep, if you're just straight blasting like heavy weights all the time, not focused on distance, not focused on, improving your work capacity or your conditioning, I mean, you're going to be blitzed out 2 weeks out before your competition. And then you're going to get one of those dreaded comp day didn't go as planned posts on Instagram. So for me, it's like the level of focus that you have to have for an event day is vastly important because not only are you exposing yourself to all the different disciplines that you could potentially see on comp day, but it's also going to prevent you for the mental grind that actually comes into play. It's like have somebody that is like essentially treating you like a judge, like giving you down commands, making sure that your feet are together if you split jerk overhead. Also making sure that like if you're doing like a stone over bar for example, like if you crash into the bar, you might not have somebody pushing back against that yoke, so you got to find a way to kind of recollect yourself to get that over the bar. And that way, at that point, you've got some examples and some data from training that you can apply to competition days. So that way you're not so far in the dark.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it too. And again, that kind of goes back to that 10,000 hours. Like if you want to be really good at it too, you're probably like, I mean, on the high end, if you're doing stones on a day, like maybe you're doing 20 reps,
Maybe.
like maybe, like depends on like what it is.
Especially if tacky's involved, like that cleanup, it's just a
Yeah.
mess.
So exactly like that. All right. So how many days does it have to get before if you did stones once a weekend, like once a week on Saturday, 20 reps max, like how many years is it going to take before you get 10,000 attempts? Or like your first one where you just fully run into like the bar, or oh, you start twisting, or oh, you have one where you're not allowed to use tacking. You have to use like actually like the stone bell, like there's so many different scenarios that come in place. Like I do like the thought process behind the event day too, because like having more opportunities to like compete and like set up situations where it's hey, it's this distance, it's this weight. Like it's actually you're keeping the main thing. And if you're competing for strongman, by all means, like you need to do event days in that manner because oh, how are stones gonna feel when it's the fifth event, not the first event? Okay. Like how is it going to feel after you do a max event? How is this transition going to be? Oh, what is it going to feel like when you're doing Wessel's rule? And, oh, you're the next one up. Oh, they skip, you're up again. And it's a different feeling to go on that full training day like that.
And I think it's also important too, Nick, that the event days are programmed. And I know that sounds so silly, but like I remember when I first started, like I would literally just go to Coliseum and I knew the events that were going to be done for the day or the events that were for my first competition. But after that, like, obviously it's a little different with my first competition because it was all max. Everything was max weight, max tonnage, et cetera, et cetera. But as I've, done this for now almost a full decade, um, if I didn't waive the intensities of each individual event that I was doing through my event days, I would have been a flash of the pan in 2018. I wouldn't even be here in front of you today still doing strongman because I would have just been beat to hell, man. So like when I'm like writing my event days, not just for myself, but also for my group that I train, to me, it's just like, okay, so let's say that we were looking at a 4 week block. Usually I do 3 week wave and then we deload on the fourth week. So like my first week, let's say we're doing some yoke training. So typically I like to introduce yoke as a little bit more speed work to start to try and, develop the skill. Focus on your gait, focus on your foot speed, focus on how you set yourself under the bar because everybody grabs different spots, holds it in a different position, et cetera, et cetera. So then the next week it's like I'm going to wave it a little bit higher, so the intensity is going to be almost like moderately heavy. And it doesn't necessarily have to just be based off of competition weight depending on how far out you are from a competition. It can also be based on, if you want to call it a 1 rep max, for something like yoke, I usually base it off of what is the heaviest weight that you've done for 50 feet without dropping it. And then on top of that, with strongman, you also have to look at time because when you're doing something like a yoke walk, every so often it'll be measured in weight, but more often than not, it's measured how fast you can do it. So I remember when I first started hearing from Greg, Andy, and a couple other guys that usually, if you're looking at a 50-foot run, you want to be if you're between like 8 and 12 seconds, you are kicking ass. If you're below that, you're definitely going to win the event, or more than likely you're going to win the event. So like that's another thing. Like when I'm looking at how people are moving, it's like, sure, I can give you more weight, but if you're slowing down and this event's for speed, it's like I may have to, call that into consideration. And then the last week, if we've gone lighter for speed work, moderately heavy to try and, introduce a little bit more stimulus. Then let's say that third week, we're getting a little bit closer to either your 1 rep max or whatever the competition weight is. Then it's like we can see where the previous 2 weeks kind of came together and how you can handle this extra weight. And then you back it down and kind of flip the script a little bit to see if, let's look at our feedback from that 4 week wave and like, all right, what worked really well, what didn't work really well, and ultimately, how do I need to bring this up, not just on event day, but also through my accessory work during the week? Because that's where strongman is definitely won and lost. Obviously, like, getting more time with the events, getting more practice with the events is very important. But it's no different than when Louis Simmons would say, like, you're getting most of your progress through accessory work. Your accessory work is all the barbell stuff that you do during the week, and it has to be really intentional. So you're not just going in and hitting shoulders. You're thinking about, like, one thing that I think about, for example, is like if I'm doing like an Atlas stone or if I'm doing sandbag work, I need to do a lot of stuff with Zerchers. I need to do a lot of stuff that'll build the posterior chain because obviously not only am I holding something in front of me, but that's very posterior chain dominant. And if I'm not addressing that during the week and I'm only addressing that during my event day, I'm not going to see as much progress as I would like. The only progress that I'm really going to make is with the technical skill. But then let's say like I go from a 300-pound Atlas stone and I want to try and get to a 320-pound Atlas stone. Well, if I'm not building, the muscle groups that I need or the movement patterns that I need during the week, my event day is going to turn into shit no matter how I wave it. And I'm going to be in that plateau. So I think that's one aspect of strongman that often gets overlooked is, and I've seen it, sometimes in my group. And it's one thing that I can't emphasize enough is like your barbell stuff has to be a lot more intentional. It's don't just treat an overhead press like an overhead press. Think about how you use an axle. Think about how you use a log, and think about the most efficient ways that you do it. And then the parts that you struggle at, that's where we need to like grab your programming and tweak it a little bit. So that way, we're not just getting you better at that particular lift, we're getting you better for event day.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it too. Like event day becomes a lot more technical and specific to what you have coming up, or if you don't have a competition in mind, like maybe an event you want to specifically work on, but you have to waive it. You have to have some sort of programming. And then throughout the week, there needs to be an emphasis on those weak areas to improve that technical skill when it comes to event day. And yeah, I've seen people's programming, they kind of go in like I keep it kind of loose. Like 80% of what it is when I'm going into a strongman day is like, hey, this is what I have structured. This is first, second, third event. Like, here's like my maybe kind of section. Here's what like the main goal is for the day. But like sometimes it's hard to account for it. Like percentages don't really work as well when it comes to strongman. You throw in time, you throw in a different type of yoke or a different implement
Hmm.
that's unique, or you throw in outdoor elements, you throw in like 100% humidity, like down in the South or like in California. I'm like, hey, if I'm lifting past 9 a.m. in Fresno, it's 110 degrees. Like I can't touch anything that's black or metal. Like my hands are going to be gone. So there's like some weird like things that come into play, but like exactly what you said, training the accessory work in the middle of the day, programming it and having some behind intent behind what you're doing on those days to really benefit your events is huge. How does that come into play when you talk about some of the strongman athlete that you work with, the clientele that maybe specifically are training for like events coming up, and then keeping that community in place, like as a coach that you're working with these clients, like are you solely the coach? Are you kind of like just hopping in as kind of like the lead person when it comes to event day? Or most of your strongman clients now kind of being a little bit more remote, kind of being out of like maybe that central hub area like Coliseum was? Because like it now seems like strongman is more accessible, implements are more accessible. People are not gravitating to an area as much as they used to. Like brute strength is gone. Like some of these
Hmm.
other big gyms that we used to go to all the time and make trips out to, like if you can find sandbags, you can find farmers handles, you can find axle bars in a lot of CrossFit gyms. You can go to a performance place and you can find chains, you can find damn near anything. You can use a trap bar as a frame for a carry. So strongman is can be done in a lot more places. So I'm sure a lot of your clients maybe have shifted towards that way just for conveniency and then access to equipment solely.
That's 100% correct. And the thing is, while when I am, running my group sessions, mostly I'm the one like orchestrating everything. What I have found is organically there are times when I can just step back because through experience, I've had other clients who are like, "Oh, I've done it this way. This way might help you." Or let's say there are times where I'm explaining a particular event and the person's looking at me like they have 1,000 heads. Well, client A may specify it to client B a little bit differently to where I don't necessarily have to do the work because they're speaking a little bit more their language. And the toughest part about especially doing remote is sometimes the miscommunication aspect, where when we might be saying the same exact thing, but we speak two different languages. And one thing that I actually take from my previous career that I use now is I try to speak on the level of a sixth grader. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but one of the things that was kind of driven to me during my previous career was most people don't necessarily care about how high level your dictionary is, how high level your thesaurus is. They just want to hear the meat and potatoes, the crux of what you're trying to say. So for me, it's all about simplifying terms. So then, when I think about like when we're done event day and then now it's over the next or it's over the next week and everybody's got their training all laid out. It's like, all right, so what do I need to work on this week? And it's like we'll have like a few bullet points that we'll kind of go over and the training will get done and it's like then we kind of look back, evaluate how it translated over to event day, and then boom, we formulate any possible changes to the plan after that. Because the thing is, like, you can go in with the plan, try to execute the plan as is, and then boom, you didn't sleep well that day. Boom, your nutrition or stress is at an all-time high. So the thing is, it's like regardless of how much we hammered it over the week or the weekend, it's like that's where I see my role kind of elevate a little bit because for me, I'm on the outside looking in. I'm not your body. I'm not in your head. I'm not the one that's, feeling what you're feeling at that moment. So instead of, you having to do all the thinking, that's where it's like, okay, so it's like right now, this training stimulus isn't necessarily going the best for you. So for me, I'm going to look at that and be like, all right, what are ways that we can kind of work around this? That's where the problem solving comes in. So I think the best way to handle this is ultimately look at the different ways that I've problem solved for myself in the past, deliver that to my clients. And what has happened, I will say it didn't really happen as much in the first year, Nick, because I didn't have a lot of people that had competition experience under their belt. They were kind of going off of my anecdotes and Instagram videos and hoping and praying that it would work out. What ended up happening was after they've done it for 4 months to like 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, now it's just like, okay, they may not necessarily have to reach out to me as much anymore or look to my eye for guidance. But if something feels off, they may look at me and then they'll think about it to themselves and they'll be like, oh, this is where this came up. So it definitely isn't something that's an overnight fix. And usually the way that I've looked at my role in the situation is if there are folks who have been around a little bit longer, obviously I can step back a little bit and they can tend to be a little bit more leaders for the people who are a little less experienced. But everybody's always trying to learn something. I'm not always going to be an expert in every particular field. So the thing is, like, if there's a place where somebody else can step in, explain something better, I'm more than happy to take a step back and allow them the floor. And then I can give my input and we can come to a solution that way.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. Like giving them more tools and then giving them some guidance and then kind of leading them along the way and being a resource for them too. It's like it's what I've always tried to do with my athletes, like in the collegiate setting or anybody that I've worked with, is like eventually I want you to be able to like write your own program like loosely. I want you to be able to understand like movement, how to execute these things, how to do it properly, kind of have an eye for it. So, because I tell all my athletes all the time, if I got 40 individuals in the room with me and it's just me by myself, like what's better? Having one coach for 40 athletes or having 41 coaches for 40 athletes? It's such a better look when you can rely on your teammate for like immediate feedback and you're like, coach, I really don't know what this is. Okay, I'll step in. But you understand what's going on, you understand the why, you understand like how movement looks, how someone else executed, how things are different when you actually don't just consume what you're doing and just go through the motions, but you're actually like trying to improve and get better. And like health and wellness should be a resource readily available for everybody. And like, yeah, there's experts for high level athletics. Like if you want to compete or you're trying to make changes or the tactical setting, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, like it's not too difficult to go out and just execute and exercise.
And the other thing too, Nick, is like there are going to be competitions or days when I'm not going to be readily available. And I got to cut the cord at some point because if I don't cut the cord, you're never going to flourish. You're never going to experience anything. But it's like, oh man, Jeff was here, so like he could help me out with this, or maybe I could shoot Jeff a text message. But it's like if I'm busy or if I'm elsewhere, it's like then it's on you. Then at that point, it's like, all right, as an athlete, you have to make a decision. Do I need to rely on this person for everything? Or is like, can I learn something and then maybe go back to the coach and see if we can find a way to, come to a happy solution here? Because if you never experience it on your own, it's really hard to be able to relate and be like, oh, I get what he's saying now. Because at that point, it creates buy-in. So, like for me, it's like since I've been through these situations, or at least for the most part, when it comes to strongman, it's a little bit easier for me to be like, yeah, that's exactly what you should feel. But for somebody who's a little bit more of a novice, until they experience it, they're going to have glassy eyes. They're going to have no idea what they're doing. So the thing is, it's like I think there's a point where you have to realize as a coach when it is time to pull back a little and let your athlete struggle a little bit. Because if they don't struggle a little bit, not just physically, but with the mental game, because there are going to be times where it's like, this didn't really feel that good today. Or like they take a video of a particular set and they're just like, that moved like shit. That moved really slow. And it's like, all right, well, why did it move really slow? It allows you as an athlete and as a person to actually grow then because it's like you're not going to have your 100% every single day. And that is totally okay. But as an athlete, you have to be okay with that at first.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it too. Like you don't want them to be so self-reliant that they're always looking over to you. And I would tell athletes this all the time. Like I remember telling before I left, like my last stop, like at UNF, I'd tell my soccer players, I was like, if at any point in time, like you're about to take a PK and you look over at me and you're asking me what direction to kick, we're fucked. It's like, what are you doing? Like you should inherently know exactly what you're doing. Like you know the movements, nothing's new. Like I coach you up on the stuff. I give you a little bit more leash so that you know how to do it, and then you're motivated. You understand what's going on. Like that's huge. And like I don't want to get to the point where you're so reliant on me. I want to basically work myself out of a job.
Hmm.
And in like a month, you're like, hey, I'm really stuck at this. I'm like, okay, I can help you with this, but the rest of the time, like you don't need me quite as much. And I don't want to just treat the symptoms and keep you always coming back for more. And it's a weird concept when you have clients that are paying you for your expertise and you're like stringing them along and only giving them enough information just to like make sure that the money is still coming in. That's not what I want to do. Like
No.
it's an ugly kind of thing when at the end of the day you want clients to be self-reliant, you want them to improve, you want them to be better, you want them to be able to like go off in like a couple years and maybe they don't need you or they have new goals and they come back to you. That's such a better way to like look at it and approach it, I think.
100%. And I tell all of my clients this, no matter what level they are. Ideally, you're going to get to a point where you don't need me anymore. And the thing is that you are not offending me when you do that. At that point, you'll know, obviously, like now it's time to take it to another level. And it's not diminishing my own abilities or anything like that. But to me, I think it's more of a success story when you have people that are a lot more self-reliant. And then you might have somebody that maybe not necessarily catches a bug to, do coaching themselves, but they may be more apt to, like, let's say if they see somebody training strongman or if they see somebody training something in a gym, sometimes, unsolicited advice isn't necessarily the best thing. But like if they see somebody in the gym that's doing something similar to what they did one time, they might, be able to relate to them a little bit and they might make a new friend. They might, find out a new reason for why that person's training a certain way. So exposure to the uncomfortable is so important. Like it prepares you to not just be a better competitor and a better physically fit person, but just a better person in general.
Yeah, I like that. I like the like self-reliance basically is a success story. Them graduating away from kind of needing you as much as they did because they're a different person and they have like how do I say it? Like they've grown. They've grown in such a way from how they were when they initially took you on and you took them on as a client. Like their leaps and bounds different. Like that is they're graduating so that they can actually kind of do their own thing. And that's what I hope like athletes that I've had for 4 years would be able to do and go on and continue like the teachings, continue the training, continue to kind of do the things that we talked about, and then also put their own spin on it. So that's awesome, man. Hey, well, talking about this too, like I know we touched on like how like going in, kind of betting on yourself and like being mindful of your bank account and like shifting gears from a career to start your own LLC and all those things. What's kind of next for Deep Blue Training? Like what's next for you? Where do you kind of see things going? Like, is owning a gym still maybe something that's on the horizon? And what kind of steps do you think you need to take to kind of get you to what's next for you and the company?
So very similar to Mike Colella's podcast. Another former Salisbury guy, another strongman guy. I've started to take the steps of getting a little bit more of my time back because I have the luxury of a pretty full roster now. I didn't expect it to happen so soon, but it definitely has. And the way that I'm looking to evolve my business is to take it a little bit more online to get a little bit more free time that way. As you know, as a strength coach yourself, the days sometimes could be long, whether it's strength coaching, personal training, strongman, all that stuff. You wake up really early. Sometimes you go to bed a little bit later than you probably should, and your nutrition isn't necessarily always perfect because you're there for the people. You're there at the mercy of people's schedule. So the way that, I've kind of shifted it is I've started to increase my online roster a little bit more. And another way that I want to expand my business virtually is looking into podcasting, just like you have. The production aspect is something that, like, I can do myself, like literally with the back of my hand. I could do it with my eyes closed. Like, that's not something that I'm worried about. But more so, it's the time commitment right now. So what I've done, obviously, is when I initially started, I pretty much worked every single day. And I will tell you, there is some aspect as an entrepreneur where you do work a little bit every single day, but I don't let it consume me like I did when I worked in my previous career. So the way that you do things like that is you start creating like end of business day processes. So like for me, for during my week, I look at, the amount of money that I made, I look at the amount of money that I spent, I look at the amount of time that I've traveled for like a business related trip. And then I look at like, what ultimately that end of day looks like. And then that's when I, close the book on that particular day during the week. And then on my weekends, I only budget 6 hours. I don't budget any more than that. And it wasn't always like that. My first 2 years in business, it wasn't like that. My third year, it's been like that. So this is where like getting a little bit more free time has definitely helped because not necessarily like, whole in terms of growing the business per se, because it's like, oh, you're working less. So that means you're not necessarily growing the business. But I am because I'm a lot happier. And the thing is, you work better when you're a lot more content, when you're not as physically and mentally exhausted. So getting that extra time and, blocking out that time, it's like, okay, I can get this much work done on this day, but this amount of time is for friends and family, and this amount of time is for training, and this amount of time is for whatever hobby that I want to engage with. And at that point, it's like when you start creating the freedom for yourself, the freedom's going to come along the way and the work will get better. So for me, if I had to lay out an outline right now, it's about starting to shift a little bit less of the in-person stuff because my people are starting to grow a little bit more on their own and be like, hey, let's shift to virtual. And then the next step would obviously be podcasting. As far as a physical gym, because, well, let me fast or backtrack to the podcasting part. Big reason why I see podcasting incredibly valuable. I've been a guest on a few podcasts. Each one has been vastly different. And the thing is, I'm learning a lot more on the job training about training, sports performance, rehab, et cetera, without even opening a textbook. Oh, by the way, I still have continuing education opportunities that I can do through online and in-person courses. So I'm learning even more about ways that people think about training. So that's why I want to actually be on the other end of it eventually. I visualized and I've been telling, I actually have a business mentor who is in a completely different field, financial. And we talk a lot about like, the structure of my business, where I want to go. And I laid out a 2 to 3 year plan of when I want to start doing the podcasting thing, because at that point, I will feel comfortable with how much free time I have again.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, you've laid out a lot of things of like where you want it to go, and it's awesome that you're actually sitting there kind of thinking those things through and not just there's something to be said about someone that dives into the deep end, like no pun intended, like with your business and everything, but like you're thoughtfully doing it too. And like you're coming from a different career path, like albeit you were still involved in sports and still training and doing everything on the side as well, but you understand too, like the volatility of like a corporate structure. You understand that like at the end of the day, like you still have to like put a roof over your head, put food on the table. There's all these other things that come into place. And I think a lot of things that coaches and entrepreneurs that are starting off do is they think that all the time it's just got to be always like at that steep incline. Like if you're doing anything and you let it plateau, like you're done for. But just like we talked about, like wave loading for like programming event days for strongman, like you're going to have some peaks and you're going to have some slow dips to take a step back so you can take three forward. And the same thing goes with like, oh, hey, like I cap myself at this many clients because like my time is important. Like, okay, let's see if I can sustain this many clients for this amount of time. Okay, well, this other spoke of the business I want to start working on. I can't do that if I keep growing my clientele. It's like, okay, well, let's try this online side and see if I can now increase my clientele, but only have a certain portion in person, a certain portion online. And you have to see like what is sustainable. And a lot of people are like, oh, I can do this. And I've seen so many intern coaches and young coaches just burn the candle at both ends and either one, hate the profession, two, not be able to sustain it, or three, just never come back ever
Hmm.
again. So it's a great way to kind of like, I think, really do it for the long haul, like especially only a couple years into it.
100%. And the thing is, it's like, your clients won't always be there. Like, if you think that you're always going to have clients just because you've had clients before, you can't rest on your laurels. You have to always try to meet people. That's the biggest advice that I would give to any entrepreneur is meet people that aren't just in your space because you will come into contact with people that you never would have dreamt of talking to. Because, like, I think about when I promoted my first strongman competition last year. We donated a portion of the proceeds to a local dog rescue in Harford County. I had no idea who these people were, but a couple clients of mine have adopted dogs from there. And I come into contact with these people who also knew a guy who flew a drone. So we had drone video at my competition. One of my clients knew a guy who was a photographer and he didn't want any money to shoot the comp photos. So everybody got photos free of charge. And there's no way I would meet this person without exposing myself to having a conversation with people that I'm not used to necessarily talking to because I could talk to you all day, Nick, because we have very similar interests in terms of, lifting, strongman, et cetera, et cetera. But like when you talk to people outside of your scope, talk to people that maybe like are involved in like real estate, like the amount of different jobs of the people that I train is insane. But the thing is, they all teach me something a little bit different. And they all teach me, like, there are different ways that you can market yourself, not just as like a strongman competitor, but like when people see that, like, they'll obviously see some of the things that I do, and their reaction is either that's really cool or what the fuck. So the thing is, it's like, if you get too many what the fucks, then they're never going to let you in. At that point, like, that's where it's on me to show them that, hey, like, just because I do something a certain way doesn't mean that you're not capable of doing something as well. That's where just talking to people like they're people, man. Like, don't just talk to them about training all the time. Like, there has to be more interest outside of training. And then not only when I'm working with somebody, like obviously they're going to ask questions about, the workout that we're doing, but also I want to get to know them as a person. I want to get to know, like, necessarily like how they function, what makes them happy, what makes them upset. And then lo and behold, that's where the referrals come in. Once you start to stop acting like a friggin' robot and somebody who's just writing a program like AI does nowadays, when you start acting like a person, that's when you start growing your business. And man, like, that's one thing that I will say that I will never negotiate my integrity or loyalty to, like, clients because just to try and make a dollar. I would rather be real than just try to make some money. It's never going to work that way.
Yeah, and it's you're not true to yourself and like you're going against your kind of beliefs and what
Correct.
you stand for. And yeah, like if I'm looking for a straight ahead answer, like, okay, I'll use AI or I'll use like a dictionary. It's like, oh, I want to know the definition of this. Oh, I want to know what time the sun comes up tomorrow. Whatever, what something that's just like black or white, yes or no, this is what it is. But taking out the personality and taking out that personal like interaction that you have with your clients and not just talking about have some substance. Like they don't want to talk about training all the time. Like they don't love training as much as we do. Like we're sitting here talking about training. I'm sure that a lot of times they don't even want to be there. So you got to get to know them on a personal level, understand like kind of what makes them tick, like why do they actually train? What are they training for? Like, and then like learn about their family or learn about things that they enjoy as well too. And like you said, that helps, especially on the business side, like talking to athletes, that helps them like understand like what motivates them and what drives them to be successful, like how to coach them better. There's so many different things. Like that's why the community and the camaraderie that comes with strongman is so much fun. I mean, I remember all the times me and Andy would train, like, yeah, we've been friends forever and like good training partners, but a lot of the times, like we would sit there and for 3 hours straight talk about what we were gonna eat after. And it
Uh-huh.
was it was just the most fun ever. That like that's one of the things I remember the most, like the absurd things that we would eat after, and then all the 3 hours leading up to that actual like meal and nap after. It was way too much fun. But you bring up a good point too, because we haven't had a lot of people that would talk about it, and I haven't spoken to a lot of people about it, just like promoting and actually running a competition, like a strongman competition, like CrossFit, powerlifting, Olympic lifting. Like you, again, the same thing we talk about with powerlifting, Olympic lifting, no knock against them. But it is very technical, and between the federations and how it's kind of run, you kind of almost seem like you have to stick to a little bit stricter guidelines. And with strongman, it's a little bit looser, even though there's organizations and you can get the federations to kind of back it. And it's this like so and so weight class, like you have the potential to go to nationals if you place in this based off how many people are in that category. Like, yeah, that's great, but man, you can get a brewery to sponsor it. You can do it in the weirdest locations, do it on the beach. Like, it's what makes strongman like really fun and interesting. Like just we'll go just base layer stuff. Like as a promoter, like what are the main things that you're trying to do to like create the best competition and an overall experience for athletes that are new and like experienced in the sport?
So whenever I've done a competition, the best competitions that I've done are usually held by people that have done it, and not just people that are like essentially figureheads or people that did it like 20 years ago for like a couple years and then stopped. For me, I think about if I'm an athlete, is this a competition that I can train almost anywhere for? So, as you had mentioned, there's a lot more access to equipment nowadays, no matter what gym you go to. But also, there's a lot more resources available online where if you don't have those resources, you can actually train strongman at a commercial gym to a degree. Obviously, time with the implements is better. But for the most part, I want it to be a little bit more accessible for the competitors. Number two, I want the judging to be competitors as well. Because the thing is, if you get somebody who is like, let's say, average gym goer A judging an axle clean and press, and one of the athletes has a screwed up lockout because of an elbow injury in the past, and they have like a bent press overhead, and the judge didn't ask them, do you have any lockout limitations? That falls back on me because I didn't have the right person there. So to me, you have to have a really good team of judges around you. And then on top of that, it has to be fun, man. Like, sure, you can give like, a lot of general events and whatnot and stuff that you'll see like, at almost every competition, but you have to find a way to put your own unique spin on it. And that's the beauty of strongman because there's so many different ways that you can structure events. Some competitions are going to be 4 events, some will be 5, some will be max, some will be for reps, some will be for time. And then also what I found too is like from training as many people as I have now, it's like, well, have you ever seen this in a competition? That would actually be really cool to be in a competition. And then it's like you watch the highest level with like World's Strongest Man, World's Strongest Woman, and you see the ways that the pieces of equipment and fabricators are making gear and stuff and how that has evolved. And it's like, well, maybe I can, reach out to a local fabricator and come up with something like that. And then the last thing, man, you got to give out cool stuff. Like realistically, it also, I've found for myself, has got me in touch with much bigger brands. And on top of that, when you're giving people away good things, they'll remember that experience, not just for the time that they had as a competitor doing the events, or regardless of what their placing was, but it shows that the promoter wants to take care of the athletes. And then one more really quick thing. I also take care of my judges too, because realistically, spotting and loading sucks. And if you don't take care of your team, even if they take care of you, I would feel absolutely horrible if I didn't at least get them something.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, having a quality promoter and having like a great venue, like you're thinking about athlete experience, spectator experience, you're making it fun, like the judges are qualified. Like you've probably gone into competitions, you're like, what the hell is going on? Like this is ragtag and like, okay, cool, you came up with a good logo, you guys got t-shirts or this and this, but you didn't think stuff through, like, okay. I mean, you've probably seen injuries and stuff like that, like all those other liability waivers. There's all these like small things that aren't sexy that go into it. Like we see it as what the event looks like and where it's hosted, but there's a lot of other things that go behind the scenes. And like I tip my hat to anybody that's promoted a competition. And I've always like asked Andy because I've always wanted to do them outside of just working with the athletes, but it's always, again, it comes back to just the logistics of trying to do all those things. So it's a feat in itself to try to pull it off. And when you do it the right way, even if you don't win that competition or you don't do as well as you did, like you can look back and be like, you know what? Like that was a lot of fun. And it's always fun to compete in strongman, but to understand that like, hey, I choose to go back and compete at this one, even if I don't like the events or even if I don't necessarily want to drive that far. And that's always a fun kind of feeling. And that's why like Maryland Strongest Man was always fun to like do because of how John ran it and like he knew what was going on and everybody enjoyed coming out and they get a good turnout. And like, I mean, I met Brian Shaw there for the first time and like big guys are coming around the corner just to like even hang out and help load. Like those events are so fun to be a part of and having cool sponsors and like Cerberus guys around and like it's awesome to see it grow and see other people that have been in the sport like want to give back and promote it and like get more people involved in it. So that's cool, man. I hope you continue to do that and I'll have to either come out for one or I'll have to like knock off my all my lifting gear and actually like compete in another one again soon.
Well, the next one that I have is in May, 2026. So, state and national records up for grabs. So, if you want to come on out, I have more information on my Instagram page.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll definitely make sure all that stuff is linked. I'll definitely have to look into that too. Summer's usually a little nicer for me, and I got that much time to kind of prepare and get my stuff moved over and see what the events are. That's definitely something I got to look into. Well, hey, Jeff, like any good training session and like any good strongman session, we got to end the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and overtime at the end. So. We'll go rapid fire, or if you think you need some more time with any of them, feel free to expand. But you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, first one I got for you. Biggest influence in strength conditioning, coaching, and biggest influence in strength sports.
Biggest influence in strength and conditioning is definitely Louis Simmons. I found that the conjugate or concurrent method has definitely helped me in terms of staying active in strongman because again, with conjugate, you're working your weaknesses, you're working with so much variety and it's helped me kind of curtail the style that I've literally been using for 8 years now. And it's kept me healthy. It's kept me explosive. It's kept me fast, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. Biggest influence in strongman has to be Andy and Greg, 1A, 1B, because obviously, like those two kind of go together. Andy, mainly because when I was at Salisbury, he was the essentially the guy that kind of gave me hope because he was for what it's worth, a not like, heavyweight strongman who was doing strongman. And that kind of pulled me into the sport like, hey, I can do this. And then Greg for giving me the gentle nudge and giving me, the preliminary tips and still giving me advice today on how to be an athlete and do this for the long run.
That's awesome. Yeah, those are 3 guys that definitely can keep anybody involved in the sport and a lot to learn from. Hey, so when you're not coaching, you're not competing, you're not getting ready for a competition or working on the business, stuff like that, what are some of your hobbies that might not be strength conditioning, strongman related?
So I am a huge sports fan. Usually after I'm doing like a strongman Saturday, I will come home and or go out with friends and we'll watch college football all day. I'm also an avid gamer. And then on top of that, I'm really big into podcasting. Like I'm not the biggest fan of reading like a hard book. Like I can do it, but I'm a very fast reader. So I like hearing it in the audio form, mainly because I do drive a good bit. So that's the easiest access to that type of information for myself. So podcasting is definitely my choice.
All right, all right. Hey, so I know you've had now two professions basically at this point, and you've done so many different things in media, radio, and television. But if you weren't doing that and you can't go back to radio and stuff either, what do you think you might be doing if like career three pops up?
Oh, no doubt. This is the easiest question. I would be doing security, man. I used to work loss prevention, and it was the most exhilarating and exciting job that I'd ever done. I would never do actual law enforcement because, for lack of a better term, I don't have the balls to do that. But that was one thing that I got an incredible amount of enjoyment out of because I took it as a second job when media wasn't paying the bills by itself. And if it paid a little bit more, I would probably be doing that today, 100,000%.
Okay. Hey, so setting up an ideal training day for yourself, it could be midweek or it could be event day. What is best training music to listen to, and what is like no shit best post-training meal after a long event day?
Okay, so training music is kind of all over the place. Greg and his eccentric music tastes. I've kind of always been of the a similar mindset. If you can lift to this, you can lift to anything. So anything that I can't do country music, but I can do everything else. Or even a podcast. I can just listen to podcasts while I'm working out. And post-training meal, I'm either going Chipotle or sushi, but if I had to riddle it down to one, I would definitely go sushi. And it would be all you can eat and probably a side of hibachi as well. I just want to feel completely on the couch after a nice long event day and not move the rest of the day.
Yeah, sushi's such a good go-to for sure.
Uh-huh.
Hey, so last one I got for you. Um, in your opinion, like what's the most important attribute when it comes to being a successful like athlete? And then if it's different, what's the most important like attribute of a successful coach and entrepreneur, you think?
Intent and message. I think it's the same for both. Remember why you started. And also remember that, while goals and, things can change over time, always remember your why. Always remember why this gives you enjoyment. Because for me, like as an entrepreneur, success doesn't come if you're miserable. Like even if you're making the most money that you've ever made, if you're miserable, why are you even doing it? Like you should find a way to find balance in your life and also find happiness. So like as an athlete, if you don't have intent, you're probably not going to perform the same way. You're probably just doing it. Some people may look at it as showing off, and that shouldn't be what it is. It should be realistically about achieving something that you're proud of. And the same thing comes to business. If you're not proud of your business, it's probably why you're going to end up folding in a year or so. So always remember why you started.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great way to put it too. And you see a lot of people that kind of get flustered or something difficult happens and they completely shift gears. It's like they weren't really rooted in why they initially started it and they lost a passion for it and they can't figure out why they're at a point in time where they're miserable. And that's the last thing you want to do when you're talking about a quote unquote passion project or your career and something that you really fallen in love with at the beginning. And again, talking about sustainability and consistency, like if you're giving that same consistent message and you put intent and purpose behind everything you're doing, then it should be fun in what you're doing. And the success will inevitably come if you keep that mindset day in and day out.
Absolutely, Nick. I couldn't agree more.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, we talked about it. I know you got the competition coming up in May, but for that kind of information, I know that you've written some articles and you got sports intake and an opinion on all that stuff. Where can they see your training, Deep Blue Training, everything you got going on? Where can they follow you?
Okay, so my website, deepbluetraining.com. And by the way, if you want to know where that came from, I'm a huge Parkway Drive fan, and that is my favorite album. So that's how I came up with that name. And then Poseidon is my logo, and he's my favorite mythological character. And then as far as where you can find my training, the best place to reach me is my Instagram. It's at Jeff from Insta. And the reason why it is that is because somebody literally called me that at a strongman competition.
Hey, and sometimes it just sticks and it works. And yeah, Parkway Drive's not a bad way to kind of base the training cycle and company off of. So that's awesome, man. Well, like I said, it's been awesome to get you on and kind of catch up, and it's cool to see. Like again, I'm not going to toot my own horn and like, but it's just a cool experience to see athletes that like I got an opportunity to work with like way back, like still find a love and passion for training and then turn it into a career in coaching like yourself and find strongman. So I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's cool to see you on the other side of the fence because I mean, since we started the podcast like over 5 years ago at this point or coming close to it, like you've always been listening and it's awesome to kind of get your opinion here from you and share you with the audience because you've been one of the avid like followers. So I appreciate your time, man. It's awesome to catch up.
Absolutely, man. And don't sell yourself short. You should be patting yourself on the back for as many great athletes and coaches that you've created as well.
Well, I appreciate it. It's moments like these that I'm happy I got into coaching and I'm glad we could still stay connected and get you on it and hopefully you surpass me and keep on the trajectory you're going because a lot of big things. I'm looking forward to watching you and seeing the next competition you got coming on. So we'll talk soon, man. Thanks again.
Thanks, Nick. You take it easy.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.